area chair for rap and hip hop culture. Fortunately, we have two no-shows. So the first two presentations we're not going to have unless Camille or Luisa are here. I haven't met them, so I don't know what they look like. The good thing about that is we have more time for our two presentations. And so we have Robert Bashara from Northern New Mexico College. His presentation is Make America Great. And Kobe Crable. I think you have the best title of the hip hop area. Little Waiting Time, SoundCloud rappers, and their quick journey to the top.
All right, so good morning, everyone. You have the title on the program, but this is the subtitle. Cultural appropriation is the use of one's culture's symbols, artifacts, genres, rituals, or technologies by members of another culture, regardless of intent, ethics, function, or outcome. According to Rogers, there are 4 types of cultural appropriation: cultural exchange, cultural dominance, cultural exploitation, and transculturation. In this essay, I will argue that Kanye West's, or Ye's, donning of the MAGA cap signifies more than his support for, or imaginary identification with, US President Donald Trump. With this overdetermination in mind, I read Ye's indexing of the Make America Great Again discourse through the lens of cultural appropriation as an act of cultural dominance, which is the use of elements of a dominant culture by members of a subordinated culture in a context in which the dominant culture has been imposed onto the subordinated culture, including appropriations that enact resistance. In what follows, I will provide reasons for why we should interpret Ye's appropriation of MAGA specifically as an act of cultural resistance, or resistance through appropriation. For Rogers, resistance involves more covert opposition, the adoption of aspects of the imposed culture in such a way as to maintain a native culture and or resist cultural domination, often without the awareness of the colonizing culture. If we carefully analyze what Ye is unconsciously saying and doing, the radical dimension at work in the latent form of his texts, be they speeches or acts, becomes clear. However, given the covert nature of cultural resistance, the majority of both the media and the public end up scrutinizing the manifest content of Ye's texts, particularly his tweets, without paying attention to either the context informing these texts or their intertextuality. My emphasis on the latent form of texts is premised on the psychoanalytic principle that the unconscious is hidden in plain sight. Trump's 2016 presidential campaign slogan, Make America Great Again, is a ripoff. Trump was merely indexing the great deregulators, or Ronald Reagan's 1980 presidential campaign slogan, Let's Make America Great Again. In other words, there's nothing original about Trump's campaign. The only variation is his removal of the contraction let's. Elsewhere, I've written about how that small change amounted to a shift in tone from a request to a demand, particularly as underscored by the fact that the slogan's 4 words are in all capitals. I will address Ye's version of the slogan later in the essay. For now, I want to address what the slogan actually means. To do that, I will rely on both Kristeva's notion of intertextuality and Laclau's concept of an empty signifier. Intertextuality is the transposition of one or several science system into another. Basically, intertextuality means that texts do not exist in a vacuum, but rather in relationship with other texts. For instance, MAGA as a text exists in relationship with the following texts: Reagan's 1980 campaign slogan, the Barack Obama birther conspiracy, and Rick Tyler's 2016 campaign, Make America White Again. In this sense, MAGA indexes a time of greatness before the presidency of Obama. In other words, a time of whiteness. But the contradiction at the heart of this ideological fantasy is more than racial or racist. For the great time being indexed is also a right-wing time of both economic neoliberalism and political nationalism. This much is clear. What about Ye? Before experiencing a nervous breakdown and prematurely ending the St. Pablo tour in the late fall of 2016, Ye declared to his fans at the San Jose concert that he would have hypothetically voted for Trump. Interestingly, he did not actually vote for anyone, and he did in fact donate thousands of dollars to Hillary Clinton's campaign. A careful interpretation ought to take into account the obvious contradiction at work here between Ye's speech and his actions. This dialectic is none other than the contradiction between consciousness, i.e. his ego, and the unconscious. It is fair to say unconscious actions speak louder than conscious words. More importantly, the majority of Ye's critics who are blinded by identity politics should remember that Ye was explicit about the nature of his support for Trump when he uttered the following caveat. Clearly, Ye is a progressive who identifies with Trump, the celebrity, on an imaginary level, perhaps in the way that many hip-hop artists identify with Tony Montana from Scarface. How do we make sense of this paradox? I suggest that we do so through the lens of radical love. This is the kind of love that Martin Luther King Jr. both preached and embodied. According to Cornel West, King's radical love was Christocentric in content and black in character. Ye is aware of Trump's faults, but his radical intent is to unconsciously change Trump, and potentially everyone else through cultural resistance, in an effort to transcend the polarizations of identity politics. In a way, Ye is occupying the position of an analyst, causing the desire of Trump, the media, the public, as Anali's hands. Everyone knows how Trump gets defensive when criticized, but Ye, along with his wife Kim Kardashian, were able to kill Trump with kindness. And their approach of radical love actually worked because it led to a milestone in terms of criminal justice reform with the passing of the First Step Act, a bill that received overwhelming bipartisan support. Many of Ye's fans are disappointed by his support for Trump because they never imagined their favorite artist being a conservative. But what if Ye is in fact not a conservative in the traditional sense, but a radical Republican, indexing those who historically were committed to emancipation of the slaves and later to the equal treatment and enfranchisement of the freed blacks? Or even better, what if we ought to read Ye's cultural resistance through the lens of the black radical tradition? As Robinson writes, situating Ye's oeuvre within the black radical tradition is a compelling conclusion when one reads Kelly's foreword to Black Marxism, The Making of the Black Radical Tradition, wherein he shows that surrealism served as a bridge between Marxism and the black radical tradition. Kelly then adds, surrealists explicitly called for the overthrow of bourgeois culture, identified with anti-colonial movements in Africa and Asia, and turned to non-European cultures as a source of ideas and inspiration in their critique of Western civilization. Consider, for instance, the intertextuality between Ye's photo tweet of his autographed MAGA cap on April 25th, 2018, and his tweet promoting the surreal song Lift Yourself 2 days later. Lift Yourself, which went viral on social media, begins with a liberatory tone in line with Ye's Christocentric vision of radical love. Hard to see the hang-ups we have today. Said we need to strive for more liberty. Lift yourself up on your feet, let's get it on. But then the lyrics become completely surreal towards the end of the song. Poopity scoop, scoop diddy whoop, whoop-de scoop de poop, poop-de scoop de. And the song's concluding verse. He is not only scat singing, as is done in jazz, but also engaging in surreal, scatological trawling of his arch nemesis, Drake. To what end? From a psychoanalytic perspective, the scatological dimension of the song corresponds to one of the 4 partial drives, specifically the anal drive. The partial drives, the oral drive, the anal drive, the scopic drive, and the invocatory drive, are sources of jouissance or enjoyment for divided subjects. The division in the song's tone reflects Ye's own subjective division between depressed ego and manic unconscious. While his depressed ego is trying to lift itself up on its feet, his manic unconscious is literally taking a shit on Drake. Where does Trump fit in all of this? Perhaps Ye identifies with Trump as a father figure on an imaginary level because he is the scatologist in chief. After all, Ye grew up without a father, which is one of the factors that contributed to his manic depression. To put it in simple terms, Ye feels like he has been losing popularity, particularly since his nervous breakdown in 2016, wherein he declared that he would have voted for Trump. He can also see that his protege, Drake, has been gaining more and more popularity, and undoubtedly, Ye feels envious. So strategically, Ye aligns himself with a winner, a president, in order to feel better about his situation. The controversy that this strategy has generated mirrors the structure of his manic depression, and his counter strategy of preaching and embodying radical love have both personal and political dimensions, that is transcending both bipolarity and polarizations. As Ye communicates in the song Reborn from his album collaboration with Kid Cudi, Kids See Ghosts, I want all the rain, I want all the pain, I want all the smoke, I want all the blame. Ye, like an alchemist, knows what to do with all of this negative energy that is channeled towards him from both the media and the public. He alchemically transforms this negative energy into good music, which is perhaps the secret to his genius as an artist. This alchemical transformation is what Ye labels dragon energy, and it is a quality or skill that he perceives Trump to embody as well. Ultimately, this parallel between him and Trump shows Ye that he too, as a controversial celebrity, can become POTUS one day, perhaps in 2024. Those who are upset with Ye are looking at him through the lens of identity politics. In other words, they see him as a black man, and they have expectations regarding how black men should behave and what they should do. Ye made the point earlier this year that the expectation that blacks must be Democrats is actually racist, more racist than his support for Trump, which, while controversial, evinces independence of thought. It is incorrect to read Ye as a conservative. That would be to read him acontextually, as if his radical speeches and acts over more than a decade of creative output are to be dismissed in a heartbeat. Therefore, I claim that cancel culture is the exact opposite of critical thinking. Ye did not betray the black community. He just does not believe in a politics based on identity. Rather, he embodies an identity based on politics. And this politics, I argue, is grounded in radical love. You can investigate Ye's resistance through appropriation for yourselves by noticing the intertextuality between his indexing of MAGA alongside phrases that contain the signifier love, which he repeats on the social media ad infinitum. In fact, We Got Love, which he performed on SNL along with Tiana Taylor, is possibly a single from his upcoming album Yandi, which was partially recorded in Uganda. Incidentally, Ye's profile picture on Twitter is an emoji of planet Earth, centered on the continent of Africa. How many conservatives do that? We Got Love is also the name of his marketing campaign for his triple white Yeezys. The campaign entailed full-page advertisements in 10 newspapers wherein the phrase "We Love" was written in 11 languages, including Arabic, which is my first language. Not mentioning Ye's efforts at localizing the economy by intending to open a Yeezy factory in his home city of Chicago. According to the logic of identity politics, Ye must be interpolated as a liberal centrist, or positioned as a Democrat because he is black. But Ye follows the logic of a radical politics based on love as a transcultural identity. In other words, Ye occupies through both his music and his being a Hegelian third position, from which transcultural inclusiveness is possible. So far, I've addressed intertextuality without addressing the context of Ye's bipolarity, which is expressed beautifully in his self-titled 8th album that came out in the summer of 2018, along with 4 other albums produced by him, which together constitute the Wyoming Sessions. The other concept I promised to unpack is La Clause, empty signifier, which is a signifier without a signified. This concept will allow us to understand the function of the signifier great in the discourse of MAGH். Great is an empty signifier because it can mean anything. In the context of MAGA, it is unconsciously associated with white among conservatives, particularly the far right. Both Tyler and Nancy Pelosi rendered this unconscious association explicit, but this ideological mechanism of consciously saying something and unconsciously meaning something else is not new. For instance, the Nazis used that same empty signifiers to index the ideological fantasy of a return to inner greatness, that is, a pure Germany without Jews. What I find fascinating about Ye's appropriation of MAGA is that he is essentially re-signifying great to mean love. No one else has really taken note of this, for everyone on the political spectrum thinks Ye is being duped. Traditionally, the oppressors are the ones who appropriate cultural symbols from the oppressed. However, Ye is resisting this trend by appropriating the oppressors. Is this not powerful? Ye's cultural resistance even pacifies Trump and gets a fruitful dialogue going, which can lead to progressive results, as I've already shown. On April 26, 2018, Ye tweeted, "We can't add empathy to MAGA by hating. We can only add empathy with love and time and truly hearing all sides." That strategy of radical love has not been convincing for most people in the US, who are polarized by a traumatic presidential election. For this reason, Ye resorted to another strategy altogether, pointing out that the big other is also barred. That is, changing MAGA to MAG, because the signifier, again, as it turns out, is also an empty signifier. On October 11, 2018, Ye visited Trump at the Oval Office, and this was his pitch to Trump and the world for adopting Make America Great over MAGA. Ye received a lot of backlash for going on TMZ and saying that 400 years of slavery sounded like a choice to him. Again, this comment was sensationalized in the media and was taken out of context, because his point was to break the signifying chain that unconsciously associates slavery with blackness. In other words, he was not disputing the history of slavery, which he is very well aware of, as is clear from his complete discography. But he is problematizing the unconscious association that lives on to this day and which continues to limit black subjects in a myriad of ways. Ye is futuristic in his approach, so he's interested in narratives of blackness beyond slavery, because he is concerned with the psychological effects of that unconscious association. His argument, similar to Morgan Freeman's, is that every month, at least in the US, should be Black History Month. So why do blacks, Ye and Freeman argue, only get 1 month in the year, especially one dedicated to narratives of slavery as opposed to narratives of liberation? Ye is aware of his blackness, but he sees himself as more than black, as a transcultural subject of radical love. He also sees himself as more than a rapper, as an artist or a genius. But the problem is that many people see him either through the lens of race or the label of rap. As a consequence, not only do most people fail to see his genius as an artist, they also end up dehumanizing him because he's not playing the part he's expected to play as a black subject, not mentioning the criticism he received for saying that the 13th Amendment to the Constitution should be abolished. While his rhetoric can certainly improve, his logic is aligned with the premise of Ava DuVernay's critically acclaimed documentary film, 13th. The publicly hysterically reacted to Ye's tweet because the political unconscious of the US is racial, if not racist. So when someone, particularly a black subject, thinks outside the racial box, he or she is demonized instantaneously. This is the lack of critical thought inherent in cancel culture. To conclude, Ye has not betrayed the black community. In fact, his radical vision is to work for all of humanity. Also, Trump and company have not duped him. In fact, he is killing them with radical love. They just do not know it yet. Without a doubt, it is ironic that the world is unable to see Ye's radical intent, given the many hints he has already shared with monikers like Jesus and Yandy. The clearest example of Ye shifting the discourse through cultural resistance is how he removed the signifier again from MAGA, which can be read through a Lacanian psychoanalytic lens as the barring of the big other, of whiteness. As mentioned earlier, he's also resignifying the empty signifier great to mean love through intertextuality. In his meeting with Trump at the Oval Office, he even made Trump wear a MAGH cap. Ye's logic, in his own words, being, it hurts us as people, specifically black people, the idea, because we say, was America ever great for us? So we made an updated hat that said, Make America Great. And Trump wore the hat, so he's open to adjusting and listening. Ye went even further because he made original caps for both Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, which they wore for a group photo. Ivanka's cap reads, Make Earth Great Again, and Kushner's cap reads, Travel Space Again. Through radical love, Ye succeeded in shifting a discourse associated with bigotry to one associated with climate change and space exploration. Thank you. Just want to mention a couple of plugs. So I'm organizing a conference which is going to be taking place at Northern New Mexico College in September. If you're interested, this is the website. I also have flyers here, and the deadline for submitting proposals is March 1st. I also have a book coming out on April 5th. It's called Decolonial Psychoanalysis. So if you're more interested, I have flyers for that too.